The firelight danced across his skin as his hands found my waist, pulling me closer in the darkness. We were supposed to be sleeping in separate tents, but here I was, pressed against him beside the dying embers, feeling the heat between us ignite, something I hadn't expected. His breath was warm against my neck as he whispered, "Are you sure about this?" I didn't answer with words. Instead, I let my fingers trace the firm lines of his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath my touch. The wilderness around us felt alive, electric, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what came next. His mouth found mine, urgent and searching, tasting like the wild mint tea we'd shared earlier. Every kiss sent warmth spiraling through me, deeper than the campfire's glow. His hands moved with practiced confidence, like he knew exactly how to make me forget where we were, forget everything except this moment. The rough texture of his flannel shirt brushed against my skin as he pulled me even closer, our bodies moving in perfect rhythm beneath the canopy of stars. Hey, loving this wilderness adventure already? Hit that like button and subscribe. I promise this story gets even hotter under the Colorado sky. I'd never planned for this when I signed up for Mason's hiking group. 3 days in the Colorado Rockies, capturing landscapes through my camera lens. That was supposed to be it. Simple, professional, clean. But from the moment he'd greeted our small group at the trailhead that morning, his easy confidence and knowing smile had stirred something restless inside me. "Everyone ready to disconnect from civilization?" he'd asked, shouldering his pack with effortless grace. His eyes had lingered on mine just a beat too long, and I'd felt that first spark of recognition, the kind that whispers of possibility. The day's hike had been challenging, winding through dense pine forests and across rocky streams. Mason moved ahead of us with the fluid motion of someone completely at home in the wild, occasionally glancing back to check on his group. Each time his gaze found me, I felt that same electric pull, like a current running between us. By evening, we'd reached our campsite beside a pristine mountain lake. The other hikers, a middle-aged couple from Denver and 2 college friends, had quickly settled into their routine of setting up camp and preparing dinner. But I found myself drawn to the water's edge, camera in hand, trying to capture the way the setting sun painted the peaks in shades of gold and rose. Getting some good shots? His voice came from just behind me, close enough that I could smell the clean scent of pine and something uniquely him. I turned, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt, just the 2 of us separated from the others by a cluster of aspen trees. "The light here is incredible," I managed, though my focus had shifted entirely to the way the golden hour illuminated the strong lines of his jaw. Mason stepped closer, his presence both comforting and thrilling. "Wait until you see it at sunrise, the way the mist rises off the lake." He gestured toward the water, but his eyes stayed on me. "Though I have a feeling you might be worth getting up early for." Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading outward like ripples on still water. This wasn't just friendly guide conversation anymore. The air between us had shifted, charged with an energy that made my skin tingle. "Is that your usual line for clients?" I asked, surprised by the playful challenge in my own voice. His laugh was low, genuine. "Trust me, I don't usually make exceptions to my professional boundaries." His finger traced along my camera strap where it crossed my shoulder, the brief contact sending electricity straight through me. "But something about you makes me want to break a few rules." The dinner call from our fellow campers interrupted the moment, but the connection remained, humming beneath the surface as we rejoined the group. Throughout the meal of camp stove pasta and shared stories, I caught Mason's eyes on me repeatedly. Each glance felt like a secret promise, building anticipation that made it hard to focus on anything else. As darkness settled over our camp, the others gradually retired to their tents, leaving Mason and me beside the dying fire. The night air was crisp, but not cold, perfect for lingering under the brilliant canopy of stars, visible only in places far from city lights. "I should probably head to bed too," I said, though my body made no move to leave the warmth of his presence. "Should you?" Mason's voice was soft, thoughtful. He shifted closer on the log we'd been sharing, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Or would you rather take a walk with me? The moon's bright enough to see the trail to the overlook." Every rational part of my mind knew I should decline, should maintain the appropriate distance between client and guide. But the way he looked at me in the firelight, like I was something precious he'd discovered in the wilderness, made rational, thought impossible. "Show me," I whispered. Mason stood, extending his hand to help me up. The moment our fingers touched, that current ran between us again, stronger now, impossible to ignore. He didn't let go as we walked away from camp, following a narrow trail that wound upward through the trees. The overlook was a natural clearing on a rocky outcrop, offering an unobstructed view of the valley below. The lake stretched out beneath us like a mirror reflecting the star-scattered sky. It was breathtaking, but I found myself more interested in the man beside me than the scenery. "This is beautiful," I said, though my attention was entirely on the way moonlight played across his features. "Not as beautiful as you," he replied, turning to face me fully. The earnestness in his voice sent warmth flooding through me. The space between us seemed to evaporate. One moment we were standing apart admiring the view, and the next his hands were framing my face, his thumbs tracing gentle circles along my cheekbones. The kiss that followed was soft at first, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. Instead, I pressed closer, my hands fisting in the fabric of his shirt. He tasted like mountain air and possibility, like everything wild and free I'd been searching for without realizing it. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since this morning," he admitted, his voice rough with honesty. "What took you so long?" I teased, and his answering smile was radiant in the moonlight. This time, when he kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. His mouth claimed mine with a hunger that matched my own, his hands tangling in my hair, holding me exactly where he wanted me. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, rapid and strong, matching the frantic rhythm of my own pulse. My hands explored the solid warmth of his shoulders, the strong column of his neck, memorizing the feel of him. When his lips trailed down to that sensitive spot just below my ear, I couldn't suppress the soft sound that escaped me, part gasp, part plea for more. "Tell me you want this," he murmured against my skin, his breath hot and urgent. "I want this," I whispered back, surprised by how certain I sounded. "I want you." The words seemed to unleash something in him. His hands grew bolder, skimming down my sides, learning the shape of me through my hiking clothes. Every touch sent fire racing through my veins, building a need that felt as vast and untamed as the wilderness around us. He guided me backward until my shoulders met the smooth bark of an ancient pine, using his body to shelter me from the cool, night air. The rough texture pressed against my back as he captured my lips again, deeper this time, more demanding. I responded eagerly, my body arching into his, craving more contact, more connection. His fingers found the hem of my thermal shirt, sliding underneath to trace patterns on my bare skin. The contrast between the cool night air and his warm touch made me shiver, made me press closer to his solid heat. When he lifted the fabric away, I helped him, suddenly desperate to feel more of his skin against mine. The moonlight painted us, both in silver, as he stepped back to look at me, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, more tender. "You're incredible," he breathed, and the reverence in his voice made me feel like something rare and precious. I reached for him then, my fingers working at the buttons of his flannel shirt with more urgency than finesse. He helped me, shrugging, out of the fabric to reveal the strong, lean build I'd been admiring all day. My hands explored the landscape of his chest, the play of muscle beneath skin, the way his breath hitched when I found a particularly sensitive spot. When he kissed me again, it was with renewed intensity, his mouth moving against mine like he was trying to memorize my taste. His hands roamed my body with increasing confidence, each touch building the heat between us higher, hotter, until I felt like I might combust from the inside out. He lifted me then, strong arms wrapping around my thighs as he pressed me back against the tree. The position brought us into perfect alignment, and I could feel every inch of his desire pressed against me, solid and urgent. The friction sent waves of sensation through me, making me gasp against his mouth. "Here?" he asked, though his body was already moving against mine in a rhythm that made thought difficult. "Here," I confirmed, surprising myself with my boldness. The wildness of the setting, the freedom of being so far from civilization, made anything feel possible. His hands made quick work of the remaining barriers between us, urgent but gentle, always checking my reactions, making sure I was with him every step of the way. When our bodies finally joined, it was with a completeness that stole my breath, like two pieces of a puzzle finally finding their perfect fit. We moved together in ancient rhythm, guided by instinct and desire rather than conscious thought. The tree at my back provided support as he held me, his strength making me feel weightless, cherished. Every movement sent pleasure cascading through me, building toward something magnificent and overwhelming. The sounds of the night surrounded us, the whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant call of an owl, the soft lapping of water against the shore far below. But all of that faded beside the music we made together. The mingled rhythm of our breathing, the soft sounds of pleasure that escaped our lips, the whispered words of encouragement and desire. His pace built gradually, each movement deliberate and controlled, designed to draw out the exquisite tension coiling tighter within me. I clung to his shoulders, my nails digging into his skin as the sensation grew almost too intense to bear. When his mouth found my throat, pressing hot kisses along the sensitive skin, I felt myself spiraling toward the edge. "Let go," he whispered against my ear, his voice rough with his own approaching climax. "Let me feel you." The combination of his words and the perfect angle of his next movement sent me over the precipice. Pleasure crashed through me in waves, more intense than anything I'd ever experienced, my body clenching around him as I cried out into the star-filled night. He followed moments later, his own release evident in the way his body tensed against mine, the deep groan that rumbled from his chest as he buried his face in my neck. For long moments we stayed locked together, hearts pounding, breathing gradually returning to normal as the afterglow settled over us like a warm blanket. When he finally lowered me back to solid ground, my legs were unsteady, my body still humming, with satisfaction. He kept his arms around me, holding me close as we both recovered from the intensity of what had just happened. "That was," I started, then found myself at a loss for words. "Incredible," he finished for me, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. "You're incredible." We dressed slowly, reluctantly, stealing kisses and gentle touches as we reassembled the barriers between us and the world. But something fundamental had shifted. The space between us no longer felt charged with potential. It felt claimed, settled, like we'd found something precious in each other. The walk back to camp was different from our journey to the Overlook. Our hands remained linked, our bodies moving in comfortable synchronization. The silence between us was companionable rather than expectant, filled with shared satisfaction rather than anticipation. At the edge of our campsite, we paused, suddenly aware that we were about to return to the world of propriety and appropriate boundaries. The dying embers of the campfire cast just enough light to see each other's faces, to read the reluctance there. "My tent or yours?" Mason asked quietly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. The question sent a fresh wave of heat through me, despite everything we'd just shared. "Yours," I replied without hesitation. "It's probably warmer." His smile was slow, promise-filled. "I'll make sure of it." We slipped into his tent like conspirators, trying not to disturb the others with the sound of the zipper or our whispered laughter. Inside the small space, illuminated only by moonlight filtering through the nylon walls, everything felt intimate and secret. He had a sleeping bag designed for two, and we settled into it together, our bodies fitting like they'd been designed for each other. The warmth between us was immediate and encompassing, chasing away any chill from the mountain air. "No regrets?" he asked softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "None," I assured him, meaning it completely. "You?" Instead of answering with words, he showed me with kisses, soft and sweet at first, then growing heated as our bodies responded to proximity and possibility. What followed was slower than our encounter by the Overlook, more thorough, more exploratory. We took time to map each other's bodies with hands and lips, learning what made the other gasp, what drew those soft sounds of pleasure. When we came together again, it was with a gentleness that somehow felt even more intimate than the passionate urgency we'd shared under the stars. The confined space of the tent created its own world, a cocoon where nothing existed except the two of us and the connection we were building touch by touch, breath by breath. I lost track of time as we moved together in the darkness, our bodies, finding a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. The sleeping bag trapped our combined heat, creating a pocket of warmth that made the cold mountain night feel distant and irrelevant. His hands knew exactly where to touch to make me arch against him, while mine discovered the spots that made him groan my name into the darkness. The climax, when it came, was gentler than before but no less intense, rolling through us both like a slow tide rather than a crashing wave. Afterward, we lay entwined, my head on his chest, his fingers combing through my hair, both of us floating in that perfect space between sleep and wakefulness. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked eventually, though part of me was afraid of the answer. "Tomorrow, we break camp and head to the next site," he said, his voice already drowsy. "But tonight, we have this." I settled more comfortably against him, letting his steady heartbeat lull me towards sleep. Whatever tomorrow brought, we would face it. But tonight was ours, claimed under the vast Colorado sky, sealed with starlight and passion. Dawn came too, soon, filtering pink and gold through the tent walls. I woke to find myself still wrapped in Mason's arms, our bodies warm and perfectly fitted together despite the cramped space. He was already awake, watching me with an expression so tender, it made my heart skip. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. "Morning," I replied, suddenly shy despite everything we'd shared. In the growing daylight, the magnitude of what had happened between us felt both thrilling and daunting. We dressed quietly, aware that the others would be stirring soon. But before we left the sanctuary of the tent, Mason caught my hand, bringing it to his lips to press a gentle kiss to my palm. "Last night wasn't just about the moment," he said seriously. "I need you to know that." The sincerity in his voice sent warmth blooming through my chest. I know, I replied, and realized I did. What we'd shared went deeper than simple physical attraction or the romance of the setting. There was something real building between us, something worth exploring. The day progressed with apparent normalcy. We broke camp, packed our gear, and set off on the trail to our next destination. To the casual observer, nothing had changed. Mason maintained his professional demeanor as our guide, and I focused on my photography, capturing the changing landscape as we hiked deeper into the wilderness. But beneath the surface, everything was different. The glances we shared were loaded with memory and promise. When he helped me across a particularly tricky stream crossing, his hands lingered longer than necessary. When I passed him a water bottle during our rest stop, our fingers brushed deliberately, sending familiar electricity racing between us. The other hikers seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, chatting about the scenery and their sore muscles, planning what they'd do when they returned to civilization. But Mason and I moved in our own bubble of shared awareness, every interaction charged with the knowledge of what we'd discovered in each other's arms. By evening, when we'd reached our new campsite beside a rushing creek, the tension between us had built to an almost unbearable level. The casual touches, the loaded glances, the memory of the night before, it all combined to create a hunger that demanded satisfaction. As soon as the others had settled into their evening routines, Mason caught my eye and nodded toward a trail that led upstream. I followed at a discreet distance, my pulse already quickening in anticipation. We found our privacy beside a natural pool where the creek had carved a swimming hole in the rock. The sound of rushing water would mask any sounds we might make, and the gathering dusk provided perfect cover. This time, there was no hesitation, no careful building of desire. We came together with the urgency of lovers who'd been separated for months rather than hours, our mouths meeting hungrily as our hands worked to eliminate the barriers between us. The smooth rock beside the pool became our bed, still warm from the day's sun. Mason's mouth traveled the length of my body with worshipful attention, his lips and tongue finding every sensitive spot, building me toward a peak that felt even higher than the mountains surrounding us. When I returned the favor, exploring him, with the same thorough dedication, his responses told me everything I needed to know about how deeply this connection ran. This wasn't just physical gratification, it was communication, conversation, a dialogue conducted in touches and sighs, and whispered names. Our coming together beside the rushing water was fierce and tender at once, wild as the landscape around us but gentle as morning light. The sound of the creek provided a natural rhythm that we matched and exceeded, our bodies moving in perfect harmony as pleasure built between us. The release, when it came, seemed to echo off the canyon walls, our voices joining the music of the wilderness in a song of completion and joy. Afterward, we lay on the sun-warmed stone, our bodies cooling in the mountain air as stars began to appear in the darkening sky above us. 2 more days, Mason said eventually, his fingers tracing abstract patterns on my bare shoulder. 2 more days, I agreed, though the words carried different weight for each of us. For him, it was a countdown to the end of his professional obligations. For me, it was time to decide what I wanted this to become beyond the boundaries of a guided hiking trip. But as I lay in his arms beside the singing water, surrounded by the vast beauty of the Colorado wilderness, I already knew my answer. What we'd found together was too precious to abandon when the trip ended. The wild places had awakened something in both of us, something worth fighting for, worth building on. The next 2 days passed in a blur of breathtaking scenery, challenging hikes, and stolen moments of intimacy. We became experts at finding privacy in the vast wilderness, whether it was during a brief separation from the group to admire a waterfall, or in the dark hours before dawn when the world belonged only to us. Each encounter deepened our connection, adding layers to what had begun as simple attraction. We talked as much as we touched, sharing stories and dreams, and the kind of honest observations that only come when guardrails have been completely abandoned. On our final night, as the group celebrated around the campfire with shared trail stories and toasted marshmallows, Mason and I slipped away one last time. We didn't go far, just to the edge of camp where a fallen log provided a natural bench overlooking the valley we'd be leaving in the morning. So what happens now? I asked, echoing my question from that first night, but with entirely different implications. Mason was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand where it rested in his. That depends, he said finally, on whether you think what we found up here can survive down there. I considered this seriously, because the question deserved serious consideration. What we'd shared in the wilderness had been intense, transformative, but the real world had a way of putting things in harsh perspective. I think, I said slowly, that what we found was real enough to be worth finding out. His smile in response was radiant, full of relief and joy and promise. I was hoping you'd say that. We talked then about practicalities. He lived in Boulder, while I was based in Denver, close enough to make regular visits feasible. He had other trips planned, but also downtime between seasons. I had the flexibility that came with freelance photography work. The logistics weren't insurmountable. More importantly, we talked about feelings, about the connection that had flared between us with such unexpected intensity. Neither of us was interested in casual encounters or temporary diversions. What we'd found felt significant, worth the effort and vulnerability that real relationships required. As the fire died down and our fellow campers retired to their tents one by one, we remained on our log, reluctant to let this perfect moment end. Tomorrow would bring the return to Trailhead, the dispersal of our group, the return to ordinary responsibilities and routines. But tonight was still ours, and we claimed it fully, returning to Mason's tent for a final night of lovemaking that was both celebration and promise. We moved together with all the passion and tenderness we'd discovered over our days in the wilderness, storing up memories and sensations to carry us through whatever came next. In the morning, as we packed up camp for the final time, there was a bitter sweetness to every familiar routine. But there was also anticipation, the excitement of new beginnings built on the solid foundation we'd established among the peaks and forests of Colorado. The hike back to the trailhead passed quickly, our group chatty with the satisfaction of a successful wilderness adventure. When we reached the parking area and began the process of saying goodbye, exchanging contact information, and promising to stay in touch, Mason and I hung back, letting the others disperse first. Finally alone beside his Jeep, we faced each other, with the uncertainty of new lovers unsure of the protocol for this kind of transition. The wilderness had provided clear rules, stolen moments, whispered conferences, the constant awareness of limited time. But here, back in the world of cell phone service and normal social expectations, the parameters felt less defined. Dinner. Tomorrow night? Mason asked, and the simple question carried the weight of everything we were choosing to build together. I'd like that, I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The kiss he gave me then was soft, sweet, full of promise, rather than desperate passion. A beginning kiss rather than an ending one. The first of what I hoped would be countless more. As I drove away, watching him grow smaller in my rearview mirror, I felt the strange combination of loss and anticipation that comes with the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The mountains were behind me now, but the wilderness Mason had awakened in me would remain, a reminder of what was possible when you were brave enough to answer desire's call. 3 weeks later, as I sat in Mason's Boulder apartment looking through the photos I'd taken on our trip, I found myself lingering over a shot I'd captured on that first night by the lake. It showed the campfire in the foreground, the star-filled sky stretching endlessly above, and in the background, barely visible, 2 figures sitting close together on a log. That's a good one, Mason said, looking over my shoulder at the image. His arms came around me from behind, familiar now, comforting and exciting all at once. It captured the beginning of something beautiful, I agreed, leaning back into his warmth, and it had. What started as a professional hiking trip had become the beginning of the most significant relationship of my life. The wilderness had stripped away all the pretenses and complications that usually surrounded new connections, leaving only the essential truth of 2 people recognizing something precious in each other. Now, looking at that photo, I could remember exactly how it felt to sit beside that dying fire, hyper-aware of Mason's presence, sensing that everything was about to change. The woman in that image had no idea what the next few days would bring, how thoroughly her life was about to be rearranged by a connection she never saw coming. But she'd been brave enough to follow where her heart led, even when it meant abandoning all her careful boundaries and planned expectations. And for that courage, she'd been rewarded with something extraordinary. So tell me, when nature calls you toward something wild and unexpected, do you answer? Have you ever found yourself in a moment where everything safe and predictable suddenly felt less important than one perfect connection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing about the moments that change everything. And if this story spoke to something wild in you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these intimate adventures. Trust me, there's so much more heat coming your way.